Manny Man Does History.
This video was sponsored by Audible. Stay around till the end to hear how you can support the channel. The history of the island of Ireland goes back thousands of years. After the most recent ice age warmed up, people began to spread across Europe. Some people came to what we now call Ireland. Stone Age people built massive tombs such as Newgrange, which is older than Stonehenge and the pyramids of Giza. By the time the Celtic culture came to Ireland, people had forgotten who had built these huge tombs and explained them with awesome stories of giants and heroes and fairies. The Celts loved their music and art, and fighting with each other a lot, and stealing cows a lot, not to mention inventing Halloween, where they sacrificed animals and people in great bonfires to keep the fairies away from their door and welcome the dead back for one night of the year. Then St. Patrick brought Christianity to Ireland. The early Christians in Ireland very wisely incorporated old Celtic traditions into Christianity, resulting in things like the old spring goddess Bridget becoming Saint Bridget. While the rest of Europe fell apart after the end of the Roman Empire, Ireland enjoyed probably one of its most productive times in its history, as the monks in their monasteries produced beautiful treasures and books. This is where Ireland became known as the Isle of Saints and Scholars. But then the Vikings came and ruined everything, sort of. They raided the monasteries and stole their treasure, but apparently they liked Ireland so much that some of them decided to stay. They established the port of Dublin, along with most of the major ports on the island. As the Vikings grew in power, the High King of Ireland, Brian Boru, led an army against them. He was killed in the battle, but the Irish were victorious. About 100 years after conquering England, the Normans came to Ireland, having been invited by the King of Leinster, Diarmaid MacMurchada, to help win his throne. The Norman leader Richard de Clare, known as Strongbow, came to Ireland, fought and won Diarmaid's throne and his daughter Aoife, and became the new King of Leinster, and began what became the Norman rule, which spread across Ireland. The Normans built the first castles in Ireland and set up more towns. The Gaelic Irish weren't known for building towns, and because of this, when the Black Death reached Ireland, the Normans were much more affected than the Gaelic Irish. The English were worried that the Normans in Ireland were becoming more Irish than the Irish, and so they banned the Irish Normans from marrying into Irish families or speaking the Irish language. When the Tudor King Henry VIII wanted a divorce, he split from the Catholic Church and in turn stripped the Church of its power in Ireland, seizing their gold and treasures and destroying many monasteries. At this time, Ireland became the Kingdom of Ireland. Whoever was King of England was also King of Ireland. His daughters, Queen Mary I and Queen Elizabeth I, continued a strong rule over Ireland, attempting plantations in Laois, Offaly and Munster, but the Irish were too tough to live with for the planters. In Elizabeth's last years, her forces fought a war against the chieftains of Ulster, the last corner of open rebellion against her. After a long war of 9 years, Hugh O'Neill eventually surrendered, only to find out that Elizabeth had died a few weeks prior. Elizabeth's cousin, King James of Scotland, became the new King of England, and he went about doing things a little differently. Rather than punishing the rebels, Rory O'Donnell and Hugh O'Neill, he made them earls. The earls soon discovered they had little real power and had to give up their old Irish way of life, and so they decided to leave Ireland and return with an army to retake the country. But they never returned. And the flight of the Earls left Ireland up for grabs, with the Irish left scattered, divided and leaderless. King James arranged the plantation of Ulster, which was so successful much of it still exists today. Worrying that the anti-Catholic Puritans in England would come to Ireland, the Catholic Irish led a very bloody and violent rebellion in which many planters were massacred in 1641. Word of these massacres reached England and people were appalled. In England, a Puritan named Oliver Cromwell set about ousting and executing the English king in what became the English Civil War. After he was done settling things in England, he set his sights on Ireland. His campaign in Ireland left a path of death and destruction. In the wake of this campaign came the largest land grab in Irish history, in which the native Irish were ousted from their land and told to head west, to hell or to Connacht. Once again, English politics spilt over into Ireland as the exiled Catholic English king James II fought against the new Protestant English king William of Orange, who was Dutch. William of Orange defeated King James at the Battle of the Boyne, but got bored of the war and struck a sweet deal with the Irish, giving them their land back. The Protestant Parliament in Dublin didn't like this, and thus the penal laws were laid on with a vengeance, which clamped down on Catholic and Presbyterian rights. Throughout the 18th century, Dublin became one of the finest cities on the British Isles, and many of its great buildings were built during this Georgian period. Seeing the success of the American and French revolutions, Theobald Wolfe thought a republic is just what Ireland needed. So the United Irishmen led a rebellion, but they lost. After this, Parliament was taken away from Ireland and it became directly ruled from London, becoming incorporated into the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. Most of the land was still owned by Protestant families, but with the new Parliament in London, many of these families relocated to England, leaving some of the Irish estates vacant and neglected, with the poor Catholic peasants living on and working the land. Catholics began getting their rights back through Catholic emancipation, with many thanks to the politician Daniel O'Connell. The poor native Irish had grown dependent on the potato, and when it failed year after year in the 1840s, and the other crops had to be exported, hundreds of thousands, millions died of disease and starvation. Many too left the country for England and America, while many prisoners were sent to Australia. Ireland's population has never fully recovered since the Great Famine. With massive public outcry to this neglect, Irish people began to look for home rule once more. The Gaelic revival brought back Irish language, Irish culture, and indeed Irish pride. Demand for home rule grew in Ireland, except in the industrial Protestant north, where thousands signed against it in the Ulster Covenant, threatening open war against the south. Both sides began forming volunteer groups to prepare for the fighting. Home rule was all set to go until a gang of Serbians shot an Austro-Hungarian archduke, starting the First World War. Home rule was put on hold while Britain fought the war, with many Irishmen heading off to fight in the trenches. Not knowing when the war might end, a group of Irish volunteers led by Pádraig Pearse decided to stage a rebellion in Ireland while the British were distracted by the war. The Easter Rising ended up being centred in Dublin, and ultimately the British outgunned the rebels and destroyed half of the centre of Dublin in the process. The ill-advised execution of the captured Irish leaders led to a massive gain in support to the Irish Republican cause. A few years later, the Irish Republican Army fought a guerrilla war against the British, driving them to a stalemate. During the fighting, the island was divided and Northern Ireland was created to appease the Unionists in the north. Michael Collins and others negotiated a treaty with the British which would create an Irish Free State, still loyal to the Crown. The treaty was passed, but the opposition, led by Eamon de Valera, was so strongly opposed it led to the Irish Civil War, which was harsh and bitter, pitting brother against brother. The Free Staters won, but at the cost of Michael Collins and thousands of others. It was a bumpy start to independence. Over the next few years, the Free State government distanced itself from the British Commonwealth, remaining neutral mostly in the Second World War, and ultimately became the Republic of Ireland. In the 1960s, seeing the civil rights marches in the USA, the Catholics of Northern Ireland began their protests against discrimination. Unfortunately, what began as peaceful protests escalated into violence, and the Troubles defined the North for decades. Meanwhile, in the Republic, Ireland, and indeed the United Kingdom for that matter, joined what became the European Union in 1973, and Ireland's economy really began to thrive into the 1990s, in a time known as the Celtic Tiger. In Northern Ireland, after decades of bombing and killing, a ceasefire was called, and the Good Friday Agreement allowed for peace in the province. As Ireland moved into the 21st century, it became a cool place for computer and tech companies to do business. The Celtic Tiger, however, was not to last, as the economy built up on the construction sector and unregulated banks fell very hard with the international banking crisis and recession. The banks were bailed out by taxpayer money, and taxpayers had to pay more taxes. Homelessness increased as more people were being priced out of an ever-climbing rental market, with very few new houses being built. There have been many positives in the last decade. Ireland legalised same-sex marriage by popular vote, the first country to do so by referendum. Queen Elizabeth II became the first English monarch to visit the Republic, and our President, Michael D. Higgins, visited the United Kingdom in symbolic gestures of peace and reconciliation over our long and tumultuous history together. The UK's decision to leave the European Union has put a bit of a strain on that relationship once again, with many questions about the Northern Ireland border and indeed a united Ireland being asked. As of January 2020, they're still being asked, but on a whole, Ireland, the United Kingdom, the European Union, indeed the world, we are all a stronger people together than we are divided. Thanks for watching, folks. This video was sponsored by Audible, the best place to listen to all your audiobooks. January is indeed a month of resolutions. No matter what your resolution or goal is this year, you'll find the perfect audiobook at Audible to motivate and inspire you. Whether it's getting physically fit, financially fit, or being a better parent, leader, or person, it's all on Audible. And to help motivate you, Audible is issuing a challenge to current and new members. Finish 3 audiobooks by March 3rd and get a $20 Amazon credit. It's that simple. Finish 3 by 3/3 and get $20. How easy is that? There's nothing to enter. Audible will keep track of your progress for you. I listen to a lot of history audiobooks as I research and illustrate, such as Medieval Ireland, The History and Legacy of the Irish During the Middle Ages by Charles River Editors, and narrated by Colin Fluxman. I've been escaping the realms of history too, into His Dark Materials, the trilogy by Philip Pullman, read by the author himself, as well as an entire cast for each character. It's the perfect thing to do while I drive or illustrate. Audible members can choose 3 titles every month, 1 audiobook and 2 exclusive Audible originals you can't hear anywhere else. Audible members also get access to exclusive guided fitness programs to help start the new year off right. Listen on any device, anytime, anywhere, at home, at the gym, on your commute, or just on the go. You'll also enjoy easy exchanges for any audiobook you don't love and an audiobook library you keep forever, even if you cancel. Start listening with a 30-day Audible trial. Choose 1 audiobook and 2 Audible originals absolutely free. Visit audible.com/John D Ruddy or text John D Ruddy to 500 500. That's audible.com/John D Ruddy, JOHN DRUDDY, or text John D Ruddy to 500 500. Thanks again for watching, folks. This has been a remastered video as requested by so many of my subscribers. Let me know which topics you would like to see me cover next in the comments below. You can support the making of new content by becoming a patron on Patreon, which has loads of rewards and perks. This month, patrons voted for the next Manny Man Does History video, which will be The Monarchs of England Part 1. Join us on Patreon to take part in the conversation. Manny Man Does the History of Ireland is available from Gill Books, with more details and illustrations of the thousands of years of Irish history. I've also adapted it into a stage show, which is a 70-minute roller coaster ride through Irish history with hundreds of characters, plenty of laughs, and even some tears. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and indeed check out johndruddy.com for upcoming dates. I also have loads of new exclusive merchandise available on Teespring, including the Lunar Landing, Ginger Celts, and Happy Little Trees. Check them out and get yours now. Thank you so much to all my patrons who helped create this video. Alexander, Angus Clydesdale, Arthur Revan, Carol Basil, Chair DJ, Colton Sayer, Crystal, Kwong Yen Tan, Dustin Holden, Grant Hughes, Jacob, Jason Romine, Jefferson Yates, Jeffrey Bernstein, Caithias, Lapre Shea Queenvara, M, Mario A. Gallardo, Marcus Booker, Mike Wise, Monday Rico, Mr. Magnificent, Mr. Easy Play 2, Myth Nguyen, Ollie Course, Rocket Wrench, Ryan Ilano, Sadie, Sina Yagane, Soars, Stephanie Lentz, Tanmay, Theophilus Kilmonis, Wendy Barley. Thanks for watching.